Colorado families, this week on Community Chat, Hagen Markets PLLC Truck Wreck and Brain Injury Lawyers is interviewing Mike Ensley, owner of Comeback Story Counseling. Mike is a compassionate provider that works with individuals suffering from PTSD and other post-traumatic disorders. He's going to share his journey to starting Comeback Story Counseling, tell us what it's like to be a client of his, and he's going to give a really great training tidbit on how he utilizes EMDR and other therapies to help turn so many lives around. This is a great therapy that my clients, being catastrophically injured with brain injuries, have really utilized and benefited from. And he's doing it with just community members all around. We really appreciate him. I call him a friend. Mike, welcome to Community Chat.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Well, I want to just start. You have a great story about how this even happened. How did you start Comeback Story? How did you get the passion to wanting to sit down with people, really hear about their lives, and allow them to be seen? Tell us about that journey to getting here.
Well, gosh, I did not know that's where I was going at the outset for sure. But years ago, what a lot of people may not realize right away about me, I was a pastor's kid, grew up in kind of Southern Baptist evangelical culture very much. And also wanted to do theater and screenwriting and stuff. And so was doing a lot of searching in there but ended up gravitating towards evangelical Christian ministry in my early 20s, which, you know what, it taught me a lot of great things, had a lot of great experiences doing recovery work, working with relationships and support groups. Also gave me a kind of an unintentional education in religious abuse and narcissistic abuse and things like that, which came in handy later. And that's not just endemic to Christian culture or anything like that. That kind of thing can be found anywhere that you're going to draw or offer anywhere there's the opportunity to influence or have power over people is going to draw kind of people like that. And so I could have just as well experienced some of those things in theater or screenwriting for sure. So I ended up working at the national headquarters of a Christian nonprofit. And it was exactly where I thought I wanted to be. This was the person I needed to be. And yet I was mysteriously unhappy. And that had a lot to do with just me, just totally focused on this version of myself I thought I needed to be. And that all fell apart in 2008 when the whole housing crash and everything, that organization closed their doors. And I was out in Orlando, Florida, with having not invested in any other part of myself and feeling really lost. And that kind of playing out in my relationships, a lot of real painful relationships, a lot of codependency, some compulsive addictive behaviors on my part as well that I struggled deeply with, and going back and kind of revisiting my recovery from a more holistic and more authentic approach that ultimately got me, in touch with what I felt was, oh my gosh, like accepting who I really am, all of who I am. And through that process, it just was kind of serendipitous. A few conversations with different people kind of lined up where I got feedback of like, you might really be a good therapist. Have you ever thought about that? And then I did think about that, and I went back to school for it, and just with each step deeper into psychology and becoming a counselor and studying these things and having the experience of actually working with clients directly, it just all clicked with me. And I ended up coming out to Colorado because this is where I wanted to kind of plant myself for this phase of my life. And I looked at joining a bigger practice, and because like owning my own business was kind of intimidating to me. But, one of those cool things about, growing into yourself is that as I interviewed at some big practices, I had that feeling, and I've learned to trust this little thing that comes up in my gut and is like, no, this isn't right for me. I need to not do it. And so I just really started to push on what I felt like were my limitations, and created, a practice for myself, and sat down. And at first it was just, Ensley counseling, whatever. And, but I really wanted it to have an identity. I wanted it to have an expression of what do I want to do here? And, the things I'm passionate about, helping the people who feel like they're out of options, helping men and educating men and getting them involved in their own emotional and relational, not just recovery, but really thriving, and just comeback story counseling. It just snapped for me one day and was like, oh, this is it. And yeah, so here we are.
I think that's a fantastic story, and I love that you are so vulnerable to share it because it's going to identify with so many people. And the reason why you and me connected was I was telling you about how a lot of my clients are suffering from PTSD and post-traumatic disorders associated with a very traumatic wreck or brain injury,
Mm,
and they're having difficulty telling their story. For them, it's a story of loss. They've lost the life that they knew that they had, and they're now in
mm,
uncharted waters. Kind of exactly what you talked about. You had this life that you thought it was the life that you thought you were going to lead for the rest of your life, and then when things changed, it was that loss of identity. And kind of how do you now describe your new story, and how do you chart the course for the future? And so we were really connected on that because that's what a lot of my clients were feeling at that time. It's this loss of what they knew of, and who are they now that they're new people. And so I appreciate you sharing that story because it really identifies with a lot of people. And you've started your practice different. You said, I'm going to make it my way. And you're doing a lot of creative things with regards to your practice, both the way that you get clients, but also how you are talking to your clients and setting up the culture around the office and how they feel comfortable with you. It's not your traditional therapist clinic. You know, it's not a sterile environment. It's not one where they're lying on the couch and you're off in the corner taking notes and not talking to them. It's a unique way of drawing out from them their story. So tell me what it's like to be your client. What would a typical session be like with you? And how do you stand apart from other therapists?
well, you're right. I like counseling, and I like to do it. It's a relational kind of service, and I do it in a relational style. And and this is just my kind of preference, but like, I don't take notes during the session. I definitely do after. Um, but because there's that little shift in the room when somebody's got a clipboard and they're writing down, and the other
Mhm.
person's, bearing their soul or whatever. But I really try to create a space where, like, look, my place is to be curious and to kind of join you in discovering how you tell your story and what you're coming in with. And then just, taking the skills I've learned and all the experience I've got to help me not tell you what to do, but to know what kind of questions to ask, where that curiosity comes in handy. It's like, okay, here's all the places where I want to know more about this. And I want to know what makes this part tick. And also just guiding you into an experience where you become a more full storyteller of your own journey, your own process, and your own life. And it's so for me, it's not about, it's definitely a here's one of those, let's start over real quick. um you know Clinical competence is so important, and
Mhm.
making sure that I know how to, appropriately for my role, figure out kind of what's going on for my client and what approaches to use is a big part of it. Yes. And to be um to also use my knowledge of the whole person experience of relating to each other, to make that process restorative for my clients. Because what I'm kind of trying to do with each client is to model, here's how to counsel yourself. I
Mhm.
mean, a big part of it is like helping the client cultivate those parts of themselves they turn to when they face their challenges. Because we might be able to navigate our way through some like answers like, oh, here's a different way to solve this problem, or something. But more important than that, because we, just as part of the human experience, don't have the ability to um, choose or change our challenges all the time, but to grow those things within ourselves that'll make make those challenges or make going through them a much different experience, one that still contains the things we really want in life, connection and joy and fulfillment and purpose.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I hope it's like. And I'm always trying to move closer to that.
Well, I think that's great. And when we started this whole thing again, it was about that storytelling. I needed advice with regards to my clients that couldn't really articulate what they were going through. And you identified with something I said that my clients have repeated to me, which was because they have brain injuries, which is invisible, they have wished that they had a scar on their face or a broken bone. So people could
Mhm.
understand what they were going through because they looked fine. And they had trouble talking about what they were going through. That's why they wanted a physical manifestation of the injury they had. And so we were trying to talk about what was the best way to get this story out of them, what they were going through, how could they articulate what it's like to have a traumatic brain injury. And so that kind of led to the conversation of the different types of therapies, the different types of things that you do to kind of draw out these stories because it's not natural. And so I wanted to talk about some training that you do. One in particular is EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That is a great one that's been utilized for trauma victims. You also use some other therapies. And so talk to me about that. What are these therapies? Really break it down for people that have never heard about it before. And how do you utilize them?
Absolutely. EMDR, in short, it's a way of simulating REM sleep and
Mhm.
engaging with those brain processes that are involved there. We still don't understand exactly what your brain is doing during REM sleep. We know kind of the category of like just processing information and storing information, but we know that it's vitally important. And EMDR is proven to help people interact with those parts of the brain um, that in their efforts to help us adapt to life actually create our trauma symptoms. When you have a traumatic event that happens, it could be something cataclysmic like experiencing combat overseas in the military,
Mhm.
or it could be something like sexual abuse or surviving an accident. It can also be relational in nature too. There's relational trauma, which is a big issue um, as well. But as your body itself is trying to adapt, sometimes that its system of storing experiences in memory can be overwhelmed. And your nervous system, even though you cognitively know something is in the past, your nervous system doesn't experience it that way. I mean, you might take kind of an example more people are familiar with, again, the the combat veteran, like if there's
Mhm.
fireworks and they go sit under the desk or something, their nervous system doesn't know they're not in danger anymore
Mhm.
because of how that processing has been overwhelmed by the immensity of the event they went through. And this therapy works directly with that system to desensitize, that's the D, that experience, that programmed reaction to the stimulus, and to reprocess it so that every time now when I experience it, something different happens in me, something I can choose and have a little bit more wiggle room to operate as myself.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't want to make it sound too, I just use that example because it's more familiar, but trauma can be much, much smaller than that. And by that, and some people use the term like big T trauma versus little t trauma.
Mhm.
But as we move through life, there can be things that change how we experience ourselves and how we relate to the world around us. Things like rejections and humiliations or disappointments can be processed as trauma. And minimizing them to ourselves never helps us overcome their impact on us. And so EMDR, I found it actually has more applications too, where we're working through insecurities with clients. I'm working through compulsive behaviors or negative self-talk, and it can be incredibly powerful to help the nervous system get on board with a new way of thinking for them. So yeah.
Great, because a lot of it is having them essentially go back to what happened to them to try to understand how it's affecting them. And in doing that, it's for the first time they're able to kind of process and talk about the trauma they've actually been through for the first time. And so you're allowed to draw a lot from that. And so it's been incredibly powerful for treatment of especially my clients that have had traumatic brain injuries,
Mhm.
that are still very susceptible to having these moments when they're driving, or when they have instability,
Mm.
and they fall. These different things are creating trauma. And so that's great. You've been working with so many people. And I really love that you can utilize this with um, just different aspects. People that are just triggered by different things in their lives, different events that have happened. This seems to be a really great process for them. Are there any other treatments or therapies that you've been utilizing that you think are helpful for just people out there that are suffering from anxiety, um, or have paranoia for certain events? Anything out there that we can utilize, just as sitting at our desks, laying in bed, something that we can do to try to just self soothe,
Mm.
and get us in a more relaxed state?
Well, one of the modalities I study and I've gotten a lot into is called IFS, which stands lots of acronyms in therapy world. It stands for Internal Family Systems, which was actually an adaptation of family systems, which is actually the psychology of working with a family, a mom, a dad, a kid, and whatever whoever's involved. Um, but using that kind of model to organize our inner experience, because we talk this way anyway. We all have different parts to us,
Mhm.
and we automatically kind of know that. We'll say, well, like, I have this side of me that comes out in this situation, or part of me thinks this but part of me says that. And that's very true about us, and that helps us. Utilizing that modality helps people to organize their inner experience, um, and to build on it, to flesh out parts of it maybe that need more influence in their thought process or decision making or emotional. And so one of the things I encourage people to do is just to notice the different parts of you. Like, when you find yourself in this place, who are you? um, how do you experience this part of yourself? Does it feel young? Does it feel older? Or does it feel big and scary, or big and strong, or small and timid, or something else? I mean, any number of things. I think that's why one of my favorite activities every year that I've started to do is to visit Fan Expo, which used to be called Comic-Con. And
Mhm.
that's such a great place to utilize some of this imagery, because I mean, it's all about movies and shows and comics and all these characters we love who reflect back to us these human experiences we have. That's why we tell those stories,
Mhm.
because we connect with what's happening in them, portrayed in an artistic way, but they really speak our own stories back to us. And I am, it's just a method of more intentionally using those characters um, to help clients, get to know parts of themselves better, and to like explore parts of themselves that maybe haven't got a chance to show what they have to offer. So it's a great way of helping folks find those resources in themselves they already have, that can be so hard to tap into for any number of reasons. But I encourage people to just think about, what was the last, scene in a movie or a show that really moved you, that really made you feel cared for in a way. I mean, this is something I see on social media. People talk about now, like people rewatching old shows. Like, we watch old movies again for
Mhm.
comfort. Like, a lot of people do it to help them go to sleep. They'll watch a movie they've seen a million times. There are elements in there. I don't think that's just distraction. It can be, for sure. But we gravitate towards certain ones because there's something in it that speaks to us. So, like, what is it about, my what is it about Gandalf or Batman or the Black Panther, who that makes me feel motivated, or makes me feel comforted, or makes me feel thoughtful? And and I really encourage folks to like look at what you're drawn to, the characters you like the most, that you find the most compelling, and think about what they are saying about you. That maybe part of you is recognizing itself portrayed, in a dramatic and artistic way. But there are elements there that we recognize that we have in ourselves and that we can build on. So get to know like your inner Gandalf, or your inner Morpheus, or your whoever. Um,
I think that's fantastic. And if you've noticed, like I have all these characters behind me, but I
yeah.
think Fantastic. And you do a great job utilizing storytelling and art and your artistic background to really bring to life kind of the stories of your clients. And we try to do the same thing. And I think that's fantastic. I think you're doing something really different, really creative, and you're so authentic with the way that you come across. I think that your background really translates with a lot of people, and I want a lot of people to know about you and be able to reach you if they think they would be a good fit as a client. So how can they contact you? What's the best way?
The best way is using the internet. My website is nocostory.com. You can also find me on most social media platforms at nocostory. Right on my website, you can click, every page should have a button that says request a consultation. I'm happy to meet with anyone who thinks they might be a, a good client for me, or just curious to come in and feel the vibe. I offer, free consultations for folks because it's so important when you're making that great choice to work on yourself in a counselor's office, that you find the right one. You've
Mhm.
got to feel comfortable. You got to feel like it's right for you and that you really connect with the practitioner you choose. And so yeah, you can come in for free and there's no strings, and that just helps you make that decision. So you're not committing to anything off of a website. And I can do that. You can do that in my office. You can do that virtually as well. Um,
That's good.
mhm.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you, Mike, for everything. We really appreciate it. We're going to put actually all your contact information in our show notes, and they will be able to reach out to you. Thank you again for everything that you do for the community, for patients that need that, guided hand to be able to tell their story, to be able to um, start their journey to recovery from different trauma that they've had. And I know that a lot of people have gotten a lot of success with you. So thank you so much for being on Community Chat. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for the invite, Caitlin. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right, thanks.